Welcome, everyone, to Cosmos' first Deities and Demons full moon celebration. Happy Halloween. Here's a fun fact. Halloween, technically last night, features a full moon every 19 years, and it's always a blue moon. Today, though, is November 1st, Day of the Dead, as well as the Catholic holidays All Saints' Day, which is a feast day, followed by All Souls' Day on November 2nd, a time to pray for departed souls. At this time of year, as we reach the halfway point to the longest night, these three concurrent holidays combine to honor the dead and to share a sense of fear at the prospect of our own mortality. We give candy and dress as archetypes and strange others. We tell scary stories of graveyards and headless horsemen. To honor this season of shortening days and lengthening nights, we will start the celebration with Alex's meditation.
Meditation on mortality. Death hovers in the mind, like an anticipated grand finale in the fireworks display of our life. We know it's coming. We know it's the end of our bodily existence. We know there's a light show. Skull and skeleton are emblematic and ubiquitous as symbolic reminders of our future. Every dead person we see is us soon enough. The meditators in the charnel grounds watched rotting corpses to embed the smelly lesson of impermanence in the mind. Like a ticking clock, the skull grins in at the banquet, and we see what we wish we had done. So appreciate and celebrate your precious sacred life, and make good use of it while you still host the Holy Ghost that haunts your bones.
An early recorded history of death rituals was left by ancient Egyptians who followed strict funerary practices to prepare the departed for the afterlife. Ka, the vital force, would not return to the body of the deceased if embalming was not carried out properly. Without embalming, the body would decay and become unrecognizable, rendering the afterlife unattainable, and damnation, a place of chaos, fire, and struggle, would be the eternal fate of the soul. If judged acceptable into the glorious afterlife, the dearly departed would enjoy the honors of a deified figure welcomed by the gods. After Anubis approves the mummification, he escorts the spirit to a trial determining his admission to either the glorious afterlife or damnation. The heart of the deceased is then weighed in comparison to the feather of Ma'at, youthful goddess of justice and truth. A heart as light as a feather is guiltless and without remorse. Amit, the demon crocodile, waits by the balancing scale to gobble up the heart if it outweighs the feather, condemning the deceased to oblivion for eternity. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, stands ready to record the outcome. Horus, the falcon-headed god who represents the personification of the pharaoh during life, leads the deceased to Osiris, his father, who represents the personification of the pharaoh after death. Osiris, lord of the underworld, is the final judge for the deceased. On his throne, represented as a mummy, Osiris holds the symbols of Egyptian kingship in his hands. Behind Osiris stands his wife Isis and her sister Nephthys, all welcoming the deceased to the afterlife in the underworld.
Dia de los Muertos has long been a Mexican national holiday associated with the Catholic observances of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Sometimes celebrated as the Week of the Dead, performances, puppet shows, pageants, parades, and graveside picnics bring together family, friends, and community to remember and pray for deceased loved ones. To celebrate and honor the dearly departed, living relations bring to the grave sites attractive gifts such as papier-mâché skulls called claveras, Aztec marigolds, and the favorite foods, beverages, and possessions of their dead relatives. An altar is an important offering of the Dia de los Muertos festival, often decorated with the dead person's favorite things. Traditionally included in the celebration are papier-mâché figures of many sizes depicting the deceased in their best style, holding favorite objects. Scenes are recreated for the benefit of the dead to represent moments of their everyday life and to honor renowned Native people, historic celebrities admired by the deceased.
The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a traditional Halloween tale set in the New York countryside in the Hudson Valley where we are right now. In a secluded glen renowned for its ghosts and haunting atmosphere, the most infamous specter in the hollow was the Headless Horseman, supposedly the ghost of a Hessian trooper whose head had been shot off by a stray cannonball during some nameless battle of the Revolution, and who rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head. Set in the 1700s, the tale tells of Ichabod Crane, a lean and lanky and extremely superstitious schoolmaster from Connecticut, who competes with Brom Bones Van Brunt, the town rowdy, for the hand of Katrina Van Tassel, the 18-year-old daughter and only child of wealthy farmer Bautus Van Tassel. Ichabod Crane, an outsider, sees marriage to Katrina as a path to Van Tassel's extravagant wealth. Bones, the local hero, plays a series of pranks on the superstitious schoolmaster to force Ichabod into a physical showdown and settle the suitors' triangle, but to no avail. The tension between Ichabod, Brom, and Katrina came to a head on a placid autumn night. At the harvest party, held at the Van Tassel's homestead, the ambitious Ichabod attends the party, partakes in the feast, and listens to ghostly legends told by Brom Bones. Seeing Brom perform, Ichabod's mind becomes set on asking Katrina for her hand in marriage as soon as the other guests have gone. But his intentions are thwarted. Failing to win Katrina's hand, Ichabod retreats, heavy-hearted and crestfallen. Riding through the woods to his lodgings, he anxiously passes several notorious haunted spots that were just vividly described by his rival at the harvest party. At a crossroad in a menacing swamp, Ichabod encounters a cloaked rider of great size and eerie silence. Terrified, the teacher sees the rider's head is not on his shoulders, but on his saddle. In a frenzied race to the bridge next to the cemetery, the Headless Horseman vanished into a flash of fire and brimstone. Ichabod gallops away for his life. To Crane's horror, he encounters ahead of him the Headless Horseman, whose horse rears up as the rider hurls its severed head directly at Ichabod. The schoolmaster attempts to dodge, but the missile strikes his head, sending him tumbling in a dead faint headlong into the dust. Well, the following morning, Ichabod had mysteriously disappeared from the area. Katrina later married Brom Bones, who always struck a knowing look whenever Ichabod's story was told. Indeed, the only evidence of the schoolmaster's flight was his discarded hat, lying next to a mysterious shattered pumpkin in the road near the bridge. Some said Ichabod returned to Connecticut and married a wealthy heiress, but old Dutch wives speculated that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means.
In the mid-19th century, the three New York Fox sisters played an important role in the origin of spiritualism, a religious movement based on the belief that spirits of the dead exist and have the ability and inclination to communicate with the living. Kate and Maggie Fox conducted seances to contact the spiritual entity who answered questions with rapping sounds. The girls claimed contact with the spirit of a peddler who was allegedly murdered and buried beneath the house. A skeleton later found in the basement seemed to confirm this, and the Fox girls became instant celebrities. They demonstrated their communication with the spirit through taps and knocks, automatic writing, and later even channeling voice communication as the spirit took control of one of the girls. Their older sister, Leah, took charge of the younger two and managed their successful careers as mediums for many years. Although their lives as spirit mediums were fraught with skepticism, their powerful popularity came at a time when a belief in the ability to communicate with the dead was rapidly growing. Spiritualism became a religious movement still practiced by the spiritualist churches in the US, Canada, and the UK. Well, soon after spiritualism emerged in the 19th century, came the religious philosophy of Spiritism. That originated with the French educator Allan Kardec. He postulated that all living beings are immortal spirits that temporarily inhabit physical bodies for several necessary incarnations to attain moral and intellectual improvement. Spiritism addresses the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits and their relation with the corporeal world. Kardec asserted that disembodied spirits, through passive or active mediumship, may have beneficent or malevolent influence on the physical world. Spiritism is currently represented in 35 countries, including a Vietnamese religion called Cao Dai, in which 3 spirit mediums claim to have received messages that identified Allan Kardec as a prophet of a new universal religion.
Raymond Moody's 1975 book, Life After Life, reported on more than 100 case studies of survivors of clinical death. Dr. Moody described the phenomenon and sparked a revolution in popular attitudes about the afterlife. Extraordinary testimonies presented in the book recount the journey to the other side and back, bearing striking similarity. All accounts reported an overwhelmingly positive effect. The stages of the near-death experience can be summarized as, number 1, a sense of peace. Number 2, consciousness separates from body. Number 3, entering a tunnel of darkness. 4, seeing the light, meeting beings of light. 5, entering the light, feelings of unconditional love. 6, past life review. 7, returning to the body spiritually reborn without fear of death.
Victor Solo, producer of documentary films, first recounted his death in an issue of Reader's Digest. At age 66, Solo collapsed of a heart attack while driving his car in Port Chester, New York. For the next 23 minutes, before his body was jolted by electric paddles, Solo had no measurable pulse, no heart activity, and no vital signs. This is his account of the experience. For me, the moment of transition from life to death was easy. There was no time for fear, pain, or thought, no chance to see my whole life before me. It lasted a brief instant. I was moving at high speed toward a net of great luminosity. The strands and knots where the luminous lines intersected were vibrating with a tremendous cold energy. The grid appeared as a barrier that would prevent further travel. I did not want to move through the grid. For a brief moment, my speed appeared to slow down, and then I was in the grid. The instant I made contact with it, the vibrant luminosity increased to a blinding intensity, which drained, absorbed, and transformed me at the same time. The grid was like a transformer, an energy converter, transporting me through form and into formlessness, beyond time and space, not in a place, nor even in a dimension, but rather in a condition of being. This new I was a distilled essence of the I that I knew. Something vaguely familiar that I had always known, buried under a superstructure of personal fears, hopes, wants, and needs. This I had no connection to ego. It was final, unchangeable, indivisible, indestructible, pure spirit. As unique as a fingerprint, I was at the same time part of some infinite, harmonious, and ordered whole. I had been there before. The condition I was experiencing was pervaded by a sense of great stillness and deep quiet. Yet there was also a sense of something momentous about to be revealed, a further change. But there's nothing further to tell except of my sudden return to the operating table.
In 1966, Dr. Ian Stevenson, chairman of the University of Virginia's Psychiatry Department, published his groundbreaking research into past life experience titled 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. Sponsored by a $1 million grant from the inventor of Xerox, Chester Carlson, Dr. Stevenson, over the next 40 years, meticulously researched over 3,000 cases of young children worldwide who inexplicably recalled a past life for which they could provide provable details. Compelling evidence is presented in Reincarnation Biology, A Contribution to the Etiology of Birthmarks and Birth Defects, 1997. A report of 200 cases in which birthmarks and birth defects correspond to a wound on the deceased person whose life is recalled with insistence by child subjects from Turkey, Brazil, Thailand, India, Lebanon, Burma, and more. In one compelling example, a 3-year-old Sri Lankan toddler overheard her mother mention Kataragama, an obscure town the little girl had never visited. The child informed the mother that she had drowned when her dumb brother pushed her in the river, that she had a father who sold flowers in a market near the Buddhist stupa, that she lived in a house that had a glass window in the roof, that dogs were tied up and fed meat in the backyard, that the house was next door to a big Hindu temple where people smashed coconuts outside on the ground. Stevenson was able to confirm that there was indeed a flower vendor in Kataragama who ran a stall near the Buddhist stupa where the temple ritual included smashing coconuts on the ground, and whose 2-year-old daughter had drowned in the river while playing with her mentally challenged brother. Stevenson's investigation proved that 27 of the 30 idiosyncratic verifiable statements made by that child were remarkably true, even though the two families had no acquaintances in common. Although scrupulous research methods were used, showing ample and repeated evidence of the past life memory phenomenon, reaction to Dr. Stevenson's research was mixed with skepticism and largely ignored. A science-based model of consciousness must accommodate the evidence of reincarnation.
Buddha considered the lessons of impermanence and death to be our greatest teachers and proposed 5 remembrances: that we are subject to aging, illness, and death, that we will separate from all that is dear to us, and that we are responsible for our actions throughout our life. In these 5 remembrances, we realize that our time on earth is limited. This should give us clarity, compassion, and purpose in living our lives. All too soon, we die, and our consciousness will leave our body to continue our soul's journey into the great mystery. Tibetan Buddhism describes the body's experience of dying as the dissolution of the elements. The mind, a subtle energetic essence of the elements, leaves the body. An adept practitioner can feel each of the elements dissolving one into the other. Number 1, the earth dissolves into water. Mind begins to separate from the body. The dying person experiences a feeling of powerlessness and deep heaviness that feels like sinking. Number 2, water dissolves into fire. Initially, there's a feeling of drowning that's quickly replaced by dehydration, heat, and thirst. The dying person may likely withdraw and lose interest in worldly affairs. Number 3, fire dissolves into wind. An initial feeling of being consumed by fire is replaced by a feeling of being very cold. digestion, and respiration weaken. Number 4, wind dissolves into space. Respiration becomes slow and rattled. A profound silence envelops the dying. According to Western medicine, death has occurred. The dying person is no longer aware of external forces. Visions arise with the opportunity to enter the luminous bardo, a state of existence intermediate between two lives on earth. After death, over a 49-day period, Tibetan Buddhists ritually read the Tibetan Book of the Dead out loud to the consciousness of the recently departed. The text urges the deceased to look for and move toward the brightest, clearest light. Over the following weeks, visions of peaceful and wrathful spiritual beings guide the consciousness of the dead to its rebirth. By the 49th day, the soul transmigrates into a newly selected life. By facing the mystery of death, may we live more fully.
Hello everyone, my name is Sigmund Freud. You may know me as the founder of psychoanalysis or as the man who asked too many questions about your mother. Throughout my life, I have attempted to distill the human condition down to its fundamental elements to create a unifying framework for understanding the psyche. Psychoanalysis was born from this ambition, and through this practice, I have discovered the drives which paint the portrait of our lives. Eros, the drive towards life, and Thanatos, the drive towards death. Eros drives us towards survival, reproduction, love, creativity, and social cooperation. It is our movement upwards towards the full potential of human flourishing. Thanatos is the downward motion towards self-destruction, aggression, and violence. I famously said in Beyond the Pleasure Principle that the goal of all life is death, and that there exists in the minds of men an unconscious movement towards death. Thanatos might be explained as the desire to reunite with the mother in the infantile state, where wish fulfillment was the rule and all bodily needs are met, where we are not shackled by the responsibilities of adulthood and the pressures of societal expectations. Thanatos could also be the brain's nostalgic desire to return to the inorganic state of being from which we came. Because living things came after and arose from inanimate objects, evolution may have programmed the psyche with an instinct to return to the primordial void of non-being. In other words, Eros can be thought of as the desire for extropy and order, and Thanatos, the desire for entropy and chaos. These two opposing forces make up the movement of energy within the psyche. Though the psyche may have an unconscious drive for non-being, death is a concept that is at odds with the ego. We cannot consciously conspire with the death drive. In fact, we erect vital illusions to deny mortality. My work on the psychology of death was expanded on by Ernest Becker, author of the book The Denial of Death. Becker writes, "The idea of death, the fear of it, haunts the human animal like nothing else. It is a mainspring of human activity, activity designed largely to avoid the fatality of death, to overcome it by denying in some way that it is the final destiny for men. In other words, Death is a problem which we need to solve. Becker poses 3 solutions to the problem of death, 3 modes of death transcendence. The first is the religious solution. Religion is a human universal, found in all cultures throughout the world, and provides us with a means to have a relationship with divine reality. Our ego is afraid of death because when we die, it dies. But if we transcend the ego and identify with God, we can see our physical death as a transformation rather than a punctuation. The second is the romantic solution, where we turn our lovers into gods and identify with their divinity. Our love object becomes divine perfection, and we raise ourselves to that perfection by joining our destiny to it. When we gaze into the eyes of our lover, we feel, if only for a moment, immortal. A lover's union also creates the space for new life to be born, which is a biological means of denying death. We live on through the life we create. That brings me to the creative solution, where we attempt to become immortal through the creation of things that will live on after our death. In this view, each work of art is an immortality project, promising eternal life through the survival of creative works. Though the attempt to deny death may lead us into acts of creation, love, service to God, it is important to not allow the fear of death to become pathological and oppressive. Ram Dass, who I began to speak with in heaven over the past year, has taught me that it is also possible to grow from the contemplation of death. Mr. Das taught me that allowing death to be intensely present enriches both the preciousness of each moment and our detachment from it. It is important that we are not so afraid of dying that we are willing to give up living. And with that, happy deities and demons, everyone. Say hi to your mother for me.
This season, we recall the lives of too many Americans and planetary citizens who have been stricken with the pandemic. Too many have endured the loss of loved ones. So many innocent people and animals have suffered this year through devastating wildfires and floods. On the full moon, as on the Day of the Dead, we remember our loved ones who have transitioned to the spirit world and invite their memory into this ceremony to honor them. To make their memory more alive for you, speak their name into the space as we offer this recitation.
At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we remember them.
At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them.
At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them.
At the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them.
At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them.
At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them.
As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them.
When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them.
When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them.
When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them.
When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them.
As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
When witches go riding and black cats are seen, the moon laughs and whispers, ah, 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 happy Halloween. Creative creatures, friends so dear, sending you, your families, love and good cheer. Peering into my crystal ball, there's much I have read. A thrilling time is in your future. Plan for many pleasures ahead. What's this? Art Church is upon us. Pick your sketchbook off the shelf. Prepare to write and draw the theme, self and God's self. Cosm member circles are a monthly delight. Enjoy a virtual tour through Entheon. 'Tis indeed quite a sight. Become a Cosm member and help build a temple. The plan is underway. Cosmonauts assemble. The November full moon ceremony is sure to shine bright, featuring cosmic performances, wisdom, and insight. You must tune in live from YouTube. Perhaps get a friend and spark up a tube. With prayers and blessings from the great source above, we leave you with a dedication to love. Cosm is made possible thanks to supporters like you. Humble vows and blessings. May all your dreams come true. Thanks for watching and playing with this rhyme. Take care, spooky souls. See you next time.
Dedication to love. From the core of our hearts, we dedicate ourselves to the complete and full expression of love in all our activities and in all our relationships.
Love is the soul's medicine, a refuge in our hearts, protecting us from utter despair. Finding compassion in the eyes of the beloved and the stranger gives us the courage to endure.
May love sensitize us with care and wisdom. May love help heal the sickness and wounds of life. May love enable us to forgive and accept ourselves.
May love enable us to forgive and accept each other. May love help us overcome our cruelty and bitterness, our greed and jealousy, our ignorance and delusion.
May love rule our hearts and minds, directing us to reach out, doing our best to benefit others, to heal suffering, to give gifts, to create beauty in the infinite network that is our world.
A heart of loving kindness pours creative grace into the world to alleviate pain and mend the heart net. To the healing art of love, we dedicate ourselves.
To all Americans, please vote for honest, intelligent, scientifically guided leadership to take action concerning the pandemic and our endangered environment. May we all live in peace and protect the web of life to bring balance into our sacred world. And may any merit generated by this gathering be offered to the benefit and liberation of all beings.
Happy full moon, happy day of the dead.